All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming to this session instead of the general session. I appreciate it. Hopefully, you should get a lot out of this. It is a more technical session. It'd be like a 400 level probably. We're going into some of the more complicated parts of authorization. Show of hands, how many people are partners or at-founding partners? Okay. That half of the room should get more benefit out of this, but customers will run into this as well, run into these topics as well. So I'll point out the differences as we go. To introduce myself, my name is Kevin Glenski. I've been with Interactive Interactive/Genesis for 14 years. My primary focus throughout the duration has been third-party integrations, either writing our own, supporting our own, or helping other people write their own. I'm also AWS certified. So the reason I mentioned that these all is, if you have any questions on how to get things into the cloud, I know the cloud is new for some people coming from on-prem, come talk to me and I'll help you through any of the questions you may have. I'm also a big Bruins fan, so if you need to find me after 6, I'll be down at the sports bar watching Game 7. Any questions? I don't want to wait till the end for questions, so if you come up with anything as I go, feel free to raise your hand. If it's something that I'm going to cover later on in the slide, I'll just say, I'll get to that in a second. But this doesn't have to be talking for 45 minutes. We can make this as interactive as we need. So I want to start off with fine-grained access controls and what they are. So basically, they're a way to limit specific resources that a user has access to. And I'm going to use these two Yetis as two different users throughout this half to kind of illustrate what's going on. So previously, and by default, if you have we'll say a routing queue view permission, you have permissions to view all of your queues. So the orange Yeti and the purple Yeti have that permission. They can see sales, marketing, and support. We make things a little more difficult now when we bring in the concept of divisions. So a division will let you segment your PureCloud org into divisions. And in this case, we have the orange division, Division A, which is sales and marketing, and Division B is support. Now you can see those two users have a GUID at the end of their permission now. And that GUID ties to the division that they can see. So for the purposes of these slides, the GUID with all A's is Division A, the GUID with all B's is always Division B. So the orange Yeti has access to Division A, and you can see sales and marketing. The purple Yeti can see support, because he only has access to Division B. With that, the division enabled on a user, when I make a request to get those queues that are listed in the system, I'm only going to get back through the API calls the ones that I have access to see. And currently we support 5 different object types in PureCloud for divisions. So queues, users, WFM units, Arctic flows, and dialer campaigns, and contact lists, and do not call lists.
Are we going to expand that?
Yes. I don't know what will be next, but there are plans to expand. Okay, so is duplicate. That's the duplicate. Oh no, sorry, don't do this. So I mentioned that users can belong to a division, but the division that the user is in does not necessarily correlate to the division that they can see. So in this case, we still have orange Yeti is in Division A, and he has permissions to see everything in Division A. But we can flip that. We can put the Yeti in Division B, but he only has access to see things in Division A. So this is a configuration issue that you may run into where your user just doesn't see what you would expect them to see. So that may be the case if their permissions are backwards here. So So by default, when this went live, all your objects are in what we call the home division. It's got its own ID. You can see it in PureCloud. And nothing is division enabled by default. So this is something you have to opt into. So here now we can move things out of the home division, put them in division A or division B. Divisions are a one object per division type deal. So, one division per object type deal. So you can only have a queue in one division at a time, but you can give users permissions to see as many divisions as you want. So where divisions doesn't fit is if you wanted to do like, there's also not a hierarchy with divisions. So if you wanted to set up divisions where you had like Northwest sales, and then underneath Northwest sales you had California sales. You can't hierarchy those, and you can't have your queue from California sales also be in Northwest sales. To help out with things a little bit, we've given a couple new API routes, and these are your the routes you would expect API V2 routing queues. We've added division views at the end of that as well. And what division views will do is this will return to you a list of all the objects, regardless of the division they're in. So this is useful if in your app you need users to be able to know about the queue, know about the IVR flow, but not have any details about who's in it or anything specific to it. So the use case for that would be if I have an app that I need to transfer a conversation from me into another queue, into another flow, and those exist in another division, you can use these API calls to be able to see, to get the IDs to be able to transfer into those. When we get to the analytics detailed queries, so /analytics conversations details query, this will filter out any conversations that belong to divisions that you cannot see. But it will also include participants. If a conversation touches a division that you can see, but also touches a division you cannot see, you're going to see everything in that conversation. So what that looks like is if conversation A goes through flow A, queue A, user A. Conversation B goes through flow B, queue B, user B. If I have access to see only division A things, and I query all the conversations in PureCloud, I'm only going to see conversation A. Now, if conversation A goes to user A transfers to queue B and user B, now it's touched two divisions. So now my analytics query is going to return both of those, my analytics query is going to return that conversation if I can see division A or division B. So this applies to client credential apps as well. And you can add divisions to the client credentials app. Now there's a difference between client credentials apps and regular user permissions. With a regular user permission, you can say, give this user access to all current divisions and all future divisions. Currently with client credentials apps, you can only say, give this app access to these specific divisions. You can't say, and all future divisions. The reason behind that is client credentials apps you can only create an app that has a subset of the permissions your user has access to. So you can't give a client credentials app access to future divisions because it's not guaranteed that you're going to have access to that future division. Does that make sense? So this kind of does make things difficult. If you have an app that's downloading all your analytics data every night, and you add a new division, you have to make sure that that new division gets added to the permissions for this client credentials app. Otherwise, you're going to start not seeing those new calls. Which brings me to my next slide. So why am I not seeing any data? So it's a little bit easier if you are a customer developing your own app, because you generally will know what divisions are in your system. It's a little bit more complicated if you are a partner developing an app for a customer and they've gone and add divisions, and now your app's not working the way they expect it to. So check your division rights, either client credentials or the users running the app. It's a browser-based app. You can also use those division queues routes and compare those with the routing, the division views routes, and compare those with the non-division view routes. So in this case, I can query division views and say it returns 10 queues. If I now query the second one, just routing/queues, now returns 5, now I know that there's divisions in play, and I don't have access to see all those divisions. So if you compare the counts between the two, that'll give you an idea of do I expect to see all divisions, and do I need to kind of alert the maintainer of the app? So if it's a client credentials app, let's say, and you built that into a customer, they're going to have to go and update the client credentials permission to be able to see those divisions. So maybe you can use these two routes to proactively notify them if you expect to see everything. Okay, so that was divisions. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
If I have a process that's using an OAuth ID, and I start implementing divisions, am I going to have to change the permissions for the OAuth ID, or is that only, or do I have to grant the OAuth ID permission to see the division?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's not just users, it's...
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Not just users, it's client credentials as well.
So is the division the only way to do the access control in the PureCloud,
Yeah.
or?
If you want that fine-grained, aside from just giving them access to all the objectives.
For users and for the app.
Yeah.
Divisions are assigned for client credentials through the role, right?
Yes.
So when master admin logs in, checks the division, update the role, assign the role to master admin, update my cleanup, then assign it to my client credential role, so that I'm sure I'll always get the latest division to my
Yes.
credentials.
Yeah. So
Then remove it.
remove the role from the user. Yes. Yeah. The user also has to have access to all those divisions.
But if he's master admin, he will.
Not necessarily. I'm pretty sure you only have access to the home division for master admins. By default.
So the assigning a client or the user to a division, is that all done in the admin, or can it be done like through an API?
It can be either.
Okay.
Yep. The Dev Center does have documentation on how to set those. Basically, where you would set, where you would configure the role and you would set permissions on that role, and you now just append, like I have here, the GUID of the division. I can take a second. I'll show you the UI of what this looks like. So inside the admin, if I go to integrations, I'll show the client credentials as an example. When I flip over, the roles now exist on a roles tab. So I can see I have admin, he has access to home. Oh, sorry, this is a bad example org. We only have one division set up in it, but here's where you have to go through and explicitly add each of the roles. If this was a user, So now I can add division here right on the user. No, sorry, what's that?
And that can.
I think it's on the roles tab. I was tracking this last night.
Yep, there you go, thanks.
Oh yeah.
So on the roles tab is where you add, oh, okay, so funny. So I do have other divisions in this org. I just don't have access to those divisions, which is why they don't show up in the client credentials.
And that can be done programmatically, right?
It can be, yes.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie, this will take a little while to get your head wrapped around it. I played around with it for a while. I didn't write the feature, but I played around with it enough to know how to get to what you need, and also to know that it is difficult to get there. So if you're finding yourself having troubles, don't. It's not your fault.
It's definitely twisty. There's a lot of add a permission here, assign something here, and then assign it over there, and then you can use it.
Yep.
Well, back and forth.
So you can see this with that back and forth, this employee has access to these divisions now. But if I switch over here, now he's part of this home division. So he has access to those divisions, but is not actually part of those.
With all that back and forth, can you give a simple use case for example, the client gives role, why have them set up so that they're different and not providing access based on the user? That's this environment that they're already involved in.
I'm not sure. So, actually, wait, can you ask that again?
Well, just the idea of having the different roles and permissions that are assigned on different divisions and different objects having different access.
It was implemented at this very fine level to cover all the different use cases. So it does make things more complicated, but then it is also flexible enough to cover how specific customers need to segment their data. Does that answer the question?
So just because by default everything just kind of do it here and it filters through and then to go in and do the granularity you need, it's not default.
Yeah, and I think that it took us a lot of work to get here, to get those permissions to roll out through the entire system and to work properly. But the feature's not done. So there will be probably easier ways to assign things across or by groups, by specific.
So when you're adding new users, queues, and other objects, you can assign it right there. You don't have to go and act with that. So moving to divisions, bunch of cruddy work. Forward, it's just add a user, here's their division, you're done in that side.
Thanks.
It was 3 hours of my night last night. Very twisty. But very good, it does what it's supposed to.
Okay, on to scopes. So scopes are an OAuth concept. And they're a way to limit what an application has access to for a given user or the PureCloud organization's data. So if you were in my talk yesterday about authorization, this is the same slide I used here last year. I use it a lot. So this is Strava. I'm logging into Strava using OAuth, using my Google account. And Strava now wants to say, okay, I want to log you in, but I want to know who you are on Google, know my friends, my circles, know my email address, and basic profile information. Those 4 things are scopes. So if you've ever looked at Google's APIs, there's a ton of them. Strava just wants these 4. So I'm going to say allow, because it's fine. And now Strava can get my basic profile information, but they can't access any of those other scopes. So they can't get my map saved data, let's say. So the scopes limits them to only those things. If you look at it like this, you had previously, also currently the scopes isn't this. Anything that your app can do, any resources that you can call, are the same as what your user has permissions to do. So if your user has permissions to delete users, your app can now delete users, which may be what you want, but if you're a customer installing an app, maybe you don't trust that third-party app to have access to delete users. So that's where scopes come into play. So with scopes, now that comes from the other direction and says, okay, my user can create, can delete users, but my app is not going to be allowed, or is going to be allowed to delete users. So this is a create user example. So the user has directory user add permission. The requested scope is going to be users, and then if both those are approved and in place, then the app can actually create users. And there are a lot of scopes. This was a large back and forth of how do we both make it granular enough to actually be functional and not be kind of a pain. And this is what we settled on. It boils down essentially to both a read and a read-write scope for each category of API calls. So we'll pick out stations. So stations and stations read-only. There are two scopes for anything that falls underneath stations. So if you go to the Dev Center, and you go to the Platform API, and you go to the stations section of API calls, those generally will all be scoped to stations. There you go, I should have picked users. So we'll go with users and users read only. So the user scope is a read and write scope. It can do anything. It can get users, it can create users, it can update users, it can delete users. The users read only scope is only access to read only those options. So generally that falls into I can only make GET requests. There are some cases where, like analytics queries, where you're doing a post, you're sending data to analytics, but you're really just getting data. So there are cases where, like that, you're not modifying anything, so it is a read-only scope. And these are all currently documented on the Dev Center. If you go to any of the resources, it will tell you what permissions are required and what scopes are required. And that's a either-or type of thing. You don't need both the user scope and the user's read-only scope. If you're doing read-write operations, you only need to request the user's scope. And then likewise, if you're only reading users and your app has no intention to update them, just request the read-only scope. Like the Strava example, apps must be approved in the org that they're going to work in. And unlike Strava, where I personally can approve this, and it's only approved for me, PureCloud apps are approved for the entire org. And only people with the OAuth client authorized permission can approve those apps. So when I go to log into an app, the UI is going to look like this. And it's going to tell me every scope that the app is requesting access to. Now I can tell it to allow, or I can say, well, I'm not going to let it, the first one, I'm not going to let it edit workspaces. I don't think this app really needs that permission. So I can actually turn that off if I want. Now, if you turn that off, the app that you're using may not handle that correctly. And we'll talk to that in a second. So now once I allow this app, any of my other users in the org who go to log in are going to have access. They won't see the screen, they'll just log in kind of like they do, or exactly like they do that. Okay, so I'm going to back up to the slides. Yes, this is out of order. So the last bullet point there, when you go through your OAuth flow, a user is logging into an app that A, hasn't been authorized for the org, and B, they don't have access to authorize in that org, it's going to redirect you, and you're going to get an error that says access denied, and the description should say the client has not been authorized for this org. So as app developers, you now have to handle that situation explicitly. Where generally today, if you go and you log in, there's very rare cases that you're going to get any kind of errors back. I have written a couple apps that did not check for the messages coming back. So when it was unauthorized, now the app was throwing 500 errors because I wasn't expecting any kind of failure to do the login flow. So what you need to do here now is recognize that it's not authorized, provide some kind of helpful prompt to your users to say, hey, this app's not authorized, you need the user with the right permissions to log in and authorize it for you. One-time thing, you know. Now, this half of the room, or generally customers building their own apps, when you create a new OAuth client, it's auto-approved for your org. So you should not have to go through this dance at all if you're writing your own. It's only when you write an app and a third party is using that app. So the top half here is now, if I'm making an API call for a scope that hasn't been approved, so on that UI, if my user is unselecting any of these here, and I make an API call, I'm going to get a 403 forbidden back with an error message saying the app is not authorized to use either of these two scopes. So in this case, it was a get operation. So a get operation can be a read-only scope or a read-write scope. So it's going to say, you know, this API call only, you know, isn't authorized for this app. This is an inside peek of what our public API code looks like. It's much more complicated than it looks here. There is a required scope annotation, and because this feature is coming well after we've already written public API, it's already live, and we have 1,500, I think we have 1,700 resources, every single resource. Turns out that's a great intern project. So we made our core intern go through 1,700 different resources and add this scope and figure out which resources it needed. Alright, so how are we trying to not break things going forward? So like I said, Scopes is not live. Scopes is in preview for most, if not all, App Foundry partners. So you guys have it enabled in your system, I believe. The way things are going to work going forward is clients that are created or updated or modified, whatever, before our GA date, which is still in flux, will be grandfathered in, and they're going to get all scopes, and they won't have to be authorized. So if you go create client ID right now, when this feature goes live, it'll have everything it needs to operate. We're doing this so that when we go to GA and a user logs into your app, and now you don't have any scopes defined, and they're not authorized, they wouldn't be able to use your app. So we're just going to let all pre-existing apps live on. Any clients created after the GA date will need those scopes defined and will need to be authorized. Now this third point is the tricky one. So clients created before the GA date who have all the scopes defined and are edited after the GA date will then be ungrandfathered into all the scopes. So if you need to update your redirect URL, let's say, now you're also going to have to define the scopes. And I'm pretty sure they won't need to be authorized. So any clients who have previously used your app will automatically be authorized to use the scopes you define. But any future customers that will use your app will also need to authorize that app. One point to notice, if you are an App Foundry partner in the beta, if you edit your client today, you will then be ungrandfathered from all scopes. So that means your customers will then have to if you edit the way it works today is if you edit that client, your customers then have to authorize that because they have to authorize it for those specific scopes. So if you are an App Foundry partner and you edit your client, your customers will now have to authorize that app. So be careful when you do that. So now the question is, I've got an app, what scopes does my app need? So this is the developer tools. If you're not familiar with it, it's at developer.mypurcloud.com/developer-tools. And we've added a new module, the Application Inspector. So from here, you can see all the clients that you've created in your org. And I'm going to go ahead and select this guy. This is the client we use every time we create a new SDK. Run some basic tests to make sure the SDK compiles and does the basic things that it needs to. So now, so now this will give you an overview of the scopes for your application. And we break it down into 3 columns. We say, here are the required scopes. Actually, I'm going to show you. It'll also show you the API calls that it's making. So we're calling, user modification stuff, notifications, and that's it. So what that breaks down to now is those scopes. This app is going to require the notifications, read-write, presence, read-write, and users, read-write scopes. If this client has scopes defined on it, we will also tell you what scopes are not being used. Or if you have read-write scopes and you only need the read scopes, we'll tell you that as well. The reason we give you the unused scopes and the downgrade scopes is you don't really want to ask for more than you need. If you go through and you select every scope and the client has to authorize that, and you go, well, this app should only be updating my user's presence and syncing it with some external presence system. But this app is now asking to modify my users and modify my queues. Your customers are going to start losing trust in your apps if you start requesting more than you absolutely need. So we'll tell you what's not being used and what you can downgrade. So if you ask for, let me modify these queues, but you're only viewing the queue information on this, then you can downgrade that to a read. Also built into this is a required permission. So this is unrelated to this talk at all, but we'll tell you which permissions your app needs. So a common scenario is I write an app, I give it to my customer, they go, okay, well what permissions does my user need to be able to run your app? And then I go, I don't know, probably user edit, and you're bound to forget one, at least one. So this will tell you, okay, in the past, we'll go back 7 days. In the past 7 days, here's the permissions that you should need for your app. You can send that out to your customer, and everyone's happy. All right, so to kind of summarize your design considerations with scopes, only request the scopes that you need. We're putting these in place to let customers be sure that the apps that they're approving for their org are going to do what they think they want to do. We want to make sure that no one's mining data that they don't need, or doing things to an org that they shouldn't be doing. So only request what you need, and that'll help guarantee the trust going forward for everything. Make sure to check your OAuth redirect for errors. You should be given an error and a description for everything. I will say, if you go and do this today, and you log in to a trusted org or an authorized org, if you are the partner logging in your customer's org, the description is going to be blank. That's a known bug. We'll fix it before GA. And if you get those errors in descriptions, give your end user a descriptive error as well. Don't just toss up an internal server error and leave them wondering why. Also check any response codes or 403 forbidden with specific denied scopes. This will tell you if you have not, either the customer has denied a scope or you haven't requested that specific scope also. So that was another case I forgot to mention. If you request users read only, and then your app tries to update a user, the app has been authorized for users read only. So if you go to do that put or that patch, you're going to get that 403 back. And for the grandfathered pre-existing apps, once you add the scope, you're no longer. Alright, so that wraps up scopes. I will toss out this slide. If you find yourself needing help post-conference with your app dev, there is a PS team that can help you get through them. If you have questions during the conference, find me, and I will be happy to answer them. There are also handouts for these on the back table. And questions?
What if you have new functionality and you want to add a scope? Can you do this with this scope?
So you add functionality, you add a new scope.
We need to have access to something else.
Yep. So what will happen in that case is you'll have to re-request the, that's a good question, but I'm not prepared to answer. When you log in, Justin, do you have an answer? All right.
I don't want to.
No, go ahead, Justin.
Actually, so yeah, you can request a new one, but it won't come in the login flow. So you can add one, but you have to authorize it today in the admin UI, as opposed to the login. The login won't come from the first time you authorize.
Does that include if you add those scopes to the requested scopes in the login flow?
You add them in the, what do you mean in the login flow?
So you can specify scopes when you hit your redirect URI, or when you redirect to login.
Yeah, I think the TLDR is only asking on a login prompt the first time.
Oh.
So it doesn't detect that, it doesn't change the day. It's something we recognize to do that. But you can ask it to answer the question.
And if when you get the prompt utility, it turns down some of the scope, when you get notified in the response or you need to parse them all and check what was approved. So, when new user install the app, he gets the prompt, he turns down the scope, and he clicks allow. Give me a response, I know everything is accepted, or I need to query all of them to know what was accepted.
There is.
You get them for sure on the first try. I don't know what else will try. He does it for sure on the first try. I'm not sure about subsequent. I'll test it.
That's a good question. I'm going to follow up on that one. I'm pretty sure that you can request scopes when you go through the logging flow, and if any of those scopes are not approved, by the time you get the auth code, it'll tell you which ones are approved, so then you have to do the diff there. So what Justin had mentioned was inside the admin UI, there's the authorized apps underneath integrations, and these are all the apps that have been approved in this org and what scopes they require. So if I click on one, I can go and either add scopes that weren't previously authorized or remove scopes that were.
If you have an app that has the required scope requirement, and it's absolutely, it has to have all of it, it's just not going to work if you know it's not going to work. Is there an option to have allow or disallow or not allow an individual scopes to be selected?
No. We don't know at that point, do you really need those? And that's our UI problem, so there's no way for us to do it.
You can do it as like it's the customer's It's the customer's data that they are the ones that can control it. So because of that, we don't enforce it.
The window is because an applicant starts off and I assume there's an API call to pull that whole scope to plug in the window and use this and have to use this app.
I mean, that's their choice, right? So but they should see that when they purchase the app, though. They'll see the scope. So if they decline a scope, then, why did they get an app? I would question, or they want to talk to the development team and say, see, you need this scope, but do you really need it? Or, they can have that discussion with the app.
Yeah, so in case you didn't hear what Chuck said, so the purpose of this is to give customers the right to control their own data. So if a customer is denying scopes that are really needed, then you should probably have the conversation with the customer. Why? And if they're denying scopes, do they really need your app in the first place? Or are you requesting too many scopes that aren't needed?
So, maybe it's just a question, but what about the scope quality and quality reloading? Doesn't quality include already reloading?
Yep. This is just an example. These aren't real apps, this is our dev work. So, yeah, so the question was, first app there has quality and quality read-only. That's not needed. If you need to update anything with quality, you just ask for quality. That includes the read-only scopes. I'll also point out user basic info is a special scope that's added to every client and is automatically authorized. User basic info will let you call /user/me. The purpose behind that is there's rarely most apps need to know who the user is for the purpose of getting the organization ID, making sure that they're a customer that should have access to this app. So we throw that in there so that you can always get the basic info. There may be cases where that's the only scope you need. If you're using PureCloud to just authorize and to verify who this person is, but not actually doing anything with PureCloud data itself, then that may fall into.
Yeah, a little bit different question. So on the OAuth client for customer type of accessing API, what's the recommendation or best practice for rotating keys? Is it to create a new
for a client? So the secret for either an auth code grant or a client credentials grant.
Yeah. Does it create a new ID and just you want to rotate it, like create the new ID, redeploy all your apps that are using that ID. You don't want to destroy the old key. It didn't seem like you could have multiple keys.
You can't have multiple keys.
You can?
No.
Oh, you can. Okay,
So what you run into is a chicken and the egg. If you want to rotate your secret, you have to get the code deployed that knows that new secret. But as soon as you know the new secret, it's already in play. So you're in trouble. So the only solution to that is to create a new client, and then update your code to use that new client ID and secret. Now that new client will have to be authorized in not in a self org, but in a customer org. That new client will have to be authorized. So you can go back and toggle between those two clients once they're both.
Right, and at some point then you go back and destroy the old one.
Unless that one was already authorized, and then you can just flip back to that one, regenerate the secret.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And then use that one in your code as well.
Are you wanting to rotate keys because of some compliance or because...
Correct.
So you have a compliance requirement that says you need to rotate all
Correct.
secrets or private passwords. So what's the...
90 days. 90 days. Or sooner.
I know how that works. 90 days comes up in the degree, and it's like, okay.
It usually comes sooner than you think.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's something we're going to see more often. So we may have to come up with something.
This is the case where I go look and see what we do there. So hard to go into these keys actually. I'm gonna make a note to add that.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll come up.
So So for now, you just create your clients, right? And just
Is there a limit on the number of OAuth clients in an org? Yes. I thought there was too. What is?
Do you know anywhere? Yeah, there's a limit.
There's a limit.
Anything else?
Are there any plans to apply divisions to data tables?
If only.
What's that?
If only. Data tables with divisions.
So those go with flows, right? The data tables.
Yes.
Yeah. They're not in the flows, they're in the admin UI, but they're utilized only in flows.
Yeah, that's a good question. There shouldn't be a problem with.
Very useful.
What?
Very useful to have.
Yeah. Yeah. There probably should be because those would definitely be specific to a division. But like I said, the whole divisions thing is still phase one of many.
And how about schedules?
Yeah, I think they should be also. I'll put a note and make the PM a note.
Can you change the division to which the flow belongs to from the division screen? Or is it glitch at the bottom?
That's a good question. Let's find out. The question was how you change the division of a flow.
You open the division, divisions.
So this division just lists out the actual divisions itself.
Yeah, straight in the division. Go to the flow tab. And the glitch was that you cannot change it here. Maybe fix it.
Well, again, I don't have access to assign those other divisions, but it should show up. It should feel very standard right from here.
So you're saying if we create our own app working on our own org, we still have to do the scope?
You still have to do the scopes. You do not, so the question was, if you create your own app to be used in your own org, you do still have to create scopes. You do not have to authorize that. Because if you're using it in your own org, you're going to authorize it anyway because it's your data. Alright, well, if you have any other questions related to scopes and divisions, or not related to scopes and divisions, and anything else you want to talk about, let me know, and thanks for coming.